If my night driver had not missed my exit, I would have unlocked my front door and walked straight into something I was never meant to survive. I am Lydia Moore. I am 61 years old, and this is my true story from Los Angeles. 6 months earlier, I stood alone beside a hospital bed in Glendale, holding my husband Daniel's hand as the machines around him went quiet. We had been married for 39 years. He had taught high school history. I had worked most of my life as a legal assistant. When he died, the life insurance barely covered the medical bills and the funeral. What was left disappeared quickly into property taxes, utilities, and the cost of simply existing in a city that does not slow down for grief. I moved into a small, aging bungalow in East Los Angeles that Daniel and I had bought decades earlier when the neighborhood still felt like a promise. Now the paint was peeling, the streetlights flickered at night, and silence inside the house felt heavier than noise ever had. Our son lived in Arizona. He called when he could, but we were no longer close. Grief has a way of stretching distances that already exist. At 61, retirement was not an option. I took a night position at a private legal records archive downtown. It was not a law firm. It was a quiet operation that stored civil case files, sealed depositions, and evidentiary documents for ongoing litigation. My job was to log files, verify chain of custody, and flag inconsistencies. The work required focus and discretion. It paid just enough to keep me afloat. My shift ended at 11:45 p.m. For years, I relied on the bus. Then, routes were cut. The last bus now left before my shift ended. Walking through downtown Los Angeles alone at midnight was not something my body or my nerves could manage anymore. My son insisted I download a rideshare app. I resisted until I had no choice. That is how I met Aaron. The first time his dark sedan pulled up outside the archive building, I hesitated. It was late. The street was empty. He looked to be in his early 50s, with tired eyes and careful movements. But his rating was perfect. 5 stars, hundreds of rides. I got in the back seat and gave him my address. "Long night?" he asked quietly. "Every night," I said. He nodded, like that told him everything. Over the next few weeks, Aaron was always the one who accepted my ride. Same nights, same time, same calm presence. He never asked personal questions. He never pushed conversation. But he noticed things. When I seemed shaken, when I was quiet, when I was cold. In October, I started bringing him tea. Chamomile, poured into a travel cup from my own kitchen. The night shift left my hands trembling sometimes, and the warmth steadied me. One night, I handed him a second cup. "You do not have to do that," he said. "I know," I replied, "but nights are long." He accepted it with a nod that felt heavier than gratitude. By November, those 12-minute rides were the only time I spoke to another human being face to face. Aaron remembered my routine. He remembered the way my porch light flickered. He remembered which nights I locked my door twice. What I did not know was that someone else had been watching too. And the night Aaron missed my exit, the life I thought I understood, finally split open. That was the night everything began. Aaron rarely spoke first, but when he did, it was never small talk. He asked questions that mattered, then waited for the answer without rushing me. Over time, I learned that silence did not make him uncomfortable. He understood it. One night, a few weeks after we first met, he told me he used to be an electrical systems technician. He worked maintenance for commercial buildings across the city for nearly 20 years. Then a scaffolding accident crushed 2 vertebrae in his lower back. The company settled. The job disappeared. Pain stayed. Driving nights paid the bills and kept him moving. It also allowed him to check on his mother every morning before sleeping. She lived alone now, her memory fading in unpredictable waves. Aaron adjusted his entire schedule around her needs. He never complained when he told me this. He spoke like a man stating facts he had already accepted. As the weeks passed, I realized something unusual. Aaron did not just remember my address. He remembered my patterns. He knew which nights I stayed late to finish audits. He noticed when my porch light was off and slowed the car before pulling up. He noticed when the street felt different. Once, as we drove past my block, he said, "There is a car parked across from your house that I have seen before." I laughed it off. Los Angeles is full of cars that never move. He did not argue. He simply nodded and kept driving. Another night, he asked if I ever brought work home. I told him no. Files never left the archive. Everything was logged. Everything was tracked. He seemed relieved. By December, bringing him tea had become a habit. Sometimes I brought ginger, sometimes peppermint. I did not think of it as kindness. It was routine. It was something normal in a life that no longer felt normal. One night, rain fell hard against the windshield, blurring the city into streaks of light. I mentioned how quiet my house felt now, how even the walls seemed to remember my husband's footsteps. Aaron kept his eyes on the road. "My son used to say, 'The house sounded different when my father died,'" he said, "like it knew." That surprised me. "You have children?" I asked. "One," he replied, "a son. We do not speak anymore." He did not elaborate, and I did not ask, but his hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. What I did not know then was that Aaron paid attention not only to me, but to others who mentioned me. Over the past month, he had driven a man who talked too much when drunk, a man who complained about audits, about missing files, about someone in records who was asking the wrong questions, a man who kept repeating my street name like he was memorizing it. Aaron had learned to listen years ago, after failing to listen once when it mattered. That failure had cost him his son. I did not know that yet. I only knew that when Aaron dropped me off each night, he waited until my front door closed before driving away. I thought it was courtesy. I did not realize it was vigilance. And when he began logging license plates in his Notes app, memorizing voices and tracking times, he did not see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a man making sure he would not ignore the warning signs again. The night the route changed, he was already certain something was wrong. He just needed to be sure I would listen. By January, our nights followed a rhythm that felt almost scripted. I stepped out of the records archive at 11:45 sharp. The security guard nodded as I passed. Aaron's car waited in the same spot, engine running, headlights dimmed. I slid into the back seat, set my bag down, and handed him the tea without a word. He thanked me quietly, like we had agreed long ago that words were optional. Those 12 minutes became the only part of my day that felt anchored. I learned that Aaron preferred driving nights because the city revealed itself honestly after dark. No performances, no crowds, just people trying to get home, trying to survive, trying to forget. He told me he could tell when someone was lying by how they breathed, not by what they said. Drunk passengers, especially, talked without realizing how much they revealed. I told him about the audit. It started innocently. A few files flagged as incomplete. A few scanned documents that did not match their physical originals. Nothing dramatic, just enough inconsistencies to make my supervisor nervous. I had been assigned to double-check archived civil cases involving elder settlements and disability claims, the kind of cases no one paid attention to once the paperwork was signed. I did not realize how carefully Aaron was listening. He asked which nights I worked late. I told him Tuesdays and Fridays were usually the worst. He nodded, storing the information somewhere behind his eyes. One evening, as we turned onto my street, I noticed a man standing under the flickering streetlight near the corner. Middle-aged, baseball cap pulled low, pretending to scroll on his phone. I mentioned it casually. Aaron slowed the car. "That man has been there before," he said. I felt a ripple of discomfort. "Are you sure?" "Yes, third time this week." I told myself it meant nothing. Los Angeles is full of people who do not belong anywhere and everywhere at once. Still, that night, I locked my door twice. The following week, I noticed a car parked across the street from my house when I returned home. An older sedan, windows tinted, engine cold. It stayed there overnight, gone by morning. I mentioned it to Aaron the next night. He asked for the color, the plate state, the damage on the rear bumper. "You notice a lot," I said. "I have to," he replied. "It is how I stay alive." It was the first time he said anything that hinted at fear. A few nights later, I found my gate unlatched when I got home. I was certain I had closed it. The latch was old, rusted, unreliable. I told myself it was nothing. Aaron did not like that explanation. He asked if I had noticed anything missing. I said no. That was not entirely true. A legal pad I kept by the phone was gone. It had contained only reminders and grocery lists, but one page held notes from work. File numbers, initials, dates. I had convinced myself I misplaced it. Aaron did not try to convince me otherwise. He simply said, "If anything else feels off, you tell me immediately." The trust between us did not arrive all at once. It built quietly, layered over routine, over shared silence, over small gestures that said, "You are not invisible." What I did not know was that the man under the streetlight had been counting the minutes between my arrival and the lights going out. That the parked car belonged to someone who knew my schedule better than I did. That someone had already decided I was a liability. And what I did not know was that Aaron had already begun connecting pieces that terrified him. Because the drunk man he kept driving spoke about audits now. He spoke about records being moved. He spoke about a woman who asked too many questions. And he spoke about a house on my street, like it was already an unlocked door. The night Aaron decided to act, he did not see it as bravery. He saw it as the last chance to keep another person from paying for his silence. And by then, trust was no longer a choice. It was the only thing standing between routine and catastrophe. The night Aaron missed my exit, the city felt wrong before I understood why. Rain had just started, a thin, oily drizzle that turned streetlights into smeared halos. I slid into the back seat and passed him the tea, expecting the familiar right turn 2 blocks later. Instead, he stayed straight, merging into traffic that flowed away from my neighborhood. "Aaron," I said gently, "you missed Cedar." He did not answer right away. His jaw was tight. His hands held the steering wheel at 10 and 2, like he was bracing for impact. "I need you to stay calm, Lydia," he said, "and I need you to listen." My stomach dropped. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk without being seen," he replied. "Fear has a sound. It is quiet, sharp, and immediate. I heard it in my own breathing. "You are scaring me," I said. "I know. I am sorry. But what I am about to tell you is worse if I say it on your street." He turned into an empty office park, long closed for the night. He parked beneath a flickering security light and shut off the engine. The sudden silence pressed in. Aaron turned to face me fully. "Do you know a man named Victor Hale?" he asked. The name hit me like a dropped file. I had seen it in the archive. Not often, but enough to recognize it. I swallowed. "I have seen the name. Why?" He exhaled slowly. "I have driven him 8 times in the last 6 weeks, always late, always drunk, always talking on the phone like he thinks the car is invisible." My pulse thudded in my ears. What does that have to do with me? Aaron unlocked his phone and held it out. "Because last Friday night he said your full address out loud. And then he said, 'She is the one pulling files. She is careful, but she is not invisible.'" My mouth went dry. "There is more," Aaron continued. "He said you work nights. He said your house is empty on Tuesdays and Fridays. He said if you take anything home, it will be there." "Take what home?" I whispered. "Files, notes, evidence." The air felt thick, like it was pressing against my chest. "You cannot be serious," I said. "He does not even know me." "He knows your routine," Aaron said, "and he knows your street." He swiped to another screen. Dates, times, short notes. "Tonight, before I picked you up, I drove past your block," he said. My heart lurched. "Why?" "Because Victor mentioned you again yesterday. He said something about tonight being a good time." Aaron's voice dropped. "His car was parked across from your house when I drove by. Engine warm, lights off." I felt dizzy. "That does not mean anything," I said, even as my hands trembled. Aaron met my eyes. "I watched him get out. I watched him walk to your gate. I watched him try your front door." The world tilted. "He tried my door?" "Yes." I could barely hear my own voice. He did not get in. But he did not leave either. He stood there, looking inside, like he was confirming something. Tears burned behind my eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I am not dropping you off tonight," Aaron said firmly. "And because you are not going home." I shook my head. "I do not understand. I do not know what he thinks I have." Aaron leaned back, exhaustion etched into his face. "Neither do I. But I know what happens when people decide someone is a problem." He paused. "And I know what happens when no one warns them in time." The rain tapped against the windshield as if counting seconds. "We are going to the police," he said. "Now." For the first time since my husband died, I felt the full weight of fear settle into my bones. And for the first time, I realized how close danger had been standing to my front door. We did not go to the police right away. First, Aaron drove aimlessly through side streets, looping through neighborhoods that looked identical in the dark. He said nothing for several minutes, letting my breathing slow, letting the shock settle into something I could function inside of. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and controlled. "I need you to tell me exactly what you have been working on at the archive." I stared at the rain streaking down the window, at the red glow of brake lights ahead of us. I told him about the audit in more detail this time. Over the past 2 months, several civil settlement files had come up incomplete, original documents missing, digital scans altered in subtle ways, amounts adjusted by small percentages that most clients would never notice. Always cases involving vulnerable plaintiffs, elderly tenants, injured laborers, immigrants who barely spoke English. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger an immediate investigation, just enough to quietly redirect money. My supervisor thought it was a clerical error at first. Then she thought it was negligence. Then she asked me to start tracking patterns. Aaron nodded slowly. Victor talked about settlements, he said. He talked about payouts being delayed, rerouted. He said someone upstairs was getting nervous. Upstairs? Management, attorneys, anyone who signs off without reading closely. My chest tightened. I never took files home, I said. Never. Everything stays locked, everything logged. I believe you, Aaron said, but Victor does not know that. He pulled into a grocery store parking lot that had been closed for years. The sign still flickered, even though the building was empty. He parked and turned off the engine. Then he showed me his phone. Notes filled the screen. Dates, pickup locations, fragments of conversation written exactly as he heard them. She checks chains of custody, audit nights, Tuesday, Friday. House empty after midnight. If she has copies, they will be there. I felt sick. You wrote all this down? I said. After the third ride, yes, Aaron replied. When he started repeating your street name like he was practicing it. My hands shook as I scrolled. There was more. 2 nights ago, Victor asked another passenger if they knew how to disable alarm systems in older houses. Last night, he talked about garages and back doors and how people never reinforce them. I closed my eyes. I remembered the loose hinge on my garage door, the window that never quite latched, and the legal pad that had gone missing. I thought I lost it, I whispered. Aaron did not respond immediately. He reached into the center console and pulled out a small digital recorder. I started recording his rides, he said, audio only, for my own protection. Passengers consent through the app terms. Most never realize it. He pressed play. Victor's voice filled the car, slurred, angry. She is careful, but she is slow. If she figures it out, she will talk. I need to get ahead of this. The recording ended. I opened my eyes and looked at Aaron. He is not just watching me, I said. He thinks I have proof. Yes, Aaron said. And even if you do not, he thinks your house is where answers live. Silence stretched between us. Then something else clicked. Victor works nights too, I said slowly. That is how he knows my schedule. That is how he knows when the building is empty. Aaron's jaw tightened. He told me he had keys. He said no one checks the basement after midnight. The basement, where the archive vault was. My stomach dropped. He is not just stealing files, I said. He is covering tracks, removing originals, making sure nothing can be traced back. And if you find something first, Aaron added quietly, he believes he can find it faster at your house. The reality settled like ice. If I had gone home tonight, I would have walked into a silent house someone else had already claimed as accessible. I wrapped my arms around myself. We cannot wait, I said. Aaron nodded. No, we cannot. He started the car. This time, he did not ask where to go. We both knew. The police station lights cut through the rain ahead of us, and for the first time since this nightmare began, fear gave way to something sharper: clarity. The police station smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. It was just after 1 in the morning, the kind of hour when truth slips out because everyone is too tired to pretend. Aaron and I sat side by side at a metal table while an officer took notes, his pen scratching steadily, as if he already sensed this would not be simple. I told my story first: my work, the audit, the missing files, the car across the street, the gate unlatched, the legal pad gone. Saying it out loud made it real in a way my mind had resisted until now. Then Aaron spoke. He handed over his phone, his notes, the dates and times, the audio recordings. The officer's expression changed when Victor's voice filled the room. Not shock, recognition. He stepped out and returned with a detective whose hair was mostly gray and whose eyes missed nothing. Victor Hale works contract security, the detective said slowly. Night coverage, rotating sites. My breath caught. Security where? I asked. The detective met my gaze. Your archive building, and 2 other facilities tied to civil litigation storage. The room seemed to tilt. He has keys, I whispered. Yes, the detective said. Limited access, enough to move around unnoticed. I felt something inside me break open. That is why the files vanished without alarms. That is why the logs looked clean. He was not breaking in. He belonged there. The detective leaned forward. There is something else. Victor Hale did not choose you randomly. He slid a photograph across the table, an old one, a group of men standing in front of a courthouse steps years ago. I recognized one face immediately. My husband. Daniel stood in the photo, younger, arm around another man. Victor Hale. I stared at it, my chest tight. They worked together years ago, the detective said. Your husband testified in a civil fraud case that cost Hale his contractor license. He was blacklisted after that. Career ruined. I felt sick. Daniel never told me that name, I said. He never talked about it. He probably thought it was over, the detective replied. Hale did not. The realization crashed down. This was not just about files or money. This was personal. He followed you because of where you work, the detective continued. But when he realized who you were married to, you became something else, a risk, and an opportunity. My hands shook. The detective stood. We are getting a warrant now, for his residence, his storage units, his vehicle. Officers moved fast after that. Radios crackled, doors opened and closed. Aaron stayed with me while everything accelerated beyond my ability to process. 2 hours later, the detective returned. They found hundreds of altered legal documents, he said. Originals removed, replacement pages fabricated, evidence of settlement diversions exceeding $500,000. My stomach dropped. And in his garage, he added, they found printed photos of your house, your gate, your back door, notes about your schedule, and a list labeled contingency. I could barely breathe. What was on it? I asked. Your name, the detective said, and a date, tonight. Silence swallowed the room. He was planning to confront you, the detective continued, to search your house, to intimidate you, if necessary, to silence you. The words felt unreal. "We intercepted him on his way back," the detective said. "He is in custody." I covered my face and sobbed, the sound raw and uncontrollable. Aaron did not speak. He simply placed his hand on the table near mine, close enough that I could feel the warmth. "You are safe now," the detective said. I did not feel safe. I felt like I had just stepped away from the edge of something that would have erased me entirely. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that if Aaron had not missed my exit, there would be no story left to tell. The weeks that followed felt unreal, like living inside someone else's memory. I did not go back to my house right away. The police placed me in a small hotel under temporary protection while they finished their investigation. Officers escorted me when I needed clothes or documents. My quiet life had become evidence. Victor Hale's arrest did not make the fear disappear. It sharpened it. I replayed every night in my mind, every routine I had believed was harmless. I wondered how long he had been watching. I wondered how close I had come to opening my door to him without ever knowing why. The investigation widened quickly. The archive building was sealed for 2 days. Federal investigators joined the case. They uncovered a network of altered civil case files tied to multiple shell accounts. Money siphoned from settlements meant for people who could not afford lawyers or second chances. Hale had not acted alone at first, but he was the only one arrogant enough to keep going after others backed out. And he was the only one reckless enough to let alcohol loosen his mouth in the wrong car. Aaron gave his statement twice, once to local detectives, once to federal agents. His notes became a timeline. His recordings became a backbone. When the case went to trial, the courtroom was quiet in a way that felt heavy rather than respectful. I took the stand on the 3rd day. I told the jury about my job, about the audit, about the missing files, about the man under the streetlight, and the car that never moved. My voice shook when I described the night Aaron missed my exit and told me not to go home. Across the room, Victor Hale stared at the table. He never looked at me. Aaron testified the next morning. He spoke calmly, clearly. He described patterns, not feelings, times, dates, exact words. When the recordings were played, the room shifted. You could feel it. The moment when the jury understood this was not speculation. It was intent. The defense tried to paint Aaron as paranoid, as a driver exaggerating drunken rambling. Then the prosecutor asked one question. If you had ignored it, what would have happened? Aaron did not hesitate. Someone would have died. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. Guilty on all counts: financial fraud, evidence tampering, stalking, attempted unlawful entry with intent to intimidate. The sentence was severe, enough years that Victor Hale would grow old behind concrete walls. When it was over, I expected relief. What I felt instead was emptiness. Justice does not restore what fear steals. It only closes the door behind it. Slowly, life began to return to a shape I recognized. I went back to work. The archive reopened under new management, new safeguards, new oversight. The audit I had started quietly had ended something much larger than I ever imagined. Aaron kept driving nights. But now I sat in the front seat. We talked more. About everything. About nothing. About the son he lost not to death, but to distance and guilt. About how listening too late can destroy a family just as surely as violence. One evening, weeks after the trial, his phone rang while we sat in traffic. He did not answer right away. When he did, his voice cracked. It was his son. He had seen the news. He had read about the case, about the driver who saved a woman by paying attention, about the man who did not look away this time. He wanted to talk. When Aaron hung up, he pulled the car over and cried like someone releasing years of held breath. I reached for his hand without thinking. "Sometimes the truth hurts," I said softly, "but sometimes it opens doors." He nodded. That night, for the first time in a long while, neither of us felt invisible. And for the first time since my husband died, I believed the future still had room to surprise me. Life did not return to what it was before. It settled into something new. When I finally went home for good, the house felt different. Not violated, but changed. The locks had been reinforced, motion lights installed, cameras quietly blinking near the eaves. Safety measures, the police said, precautions. But what truly made the house livable again was knowing that danger no longer lived unseen in the shadows of my routine. I kept my job at the archive, still working nights, still handling files most people never think about. But I no longer moved through my days believing that quiet meant safety. I understood now that silence can hide intentions just as easily as it can hide pain. Aaron and I began having dinner together on Sundays. At first it was just coffee, then soup, then meals that took time. He introduced me to his mother, who smiled at me like she recognized something familiar even when words escaped her. A few weeks later, his son joined us. Awkward at first, careful. Two men relearning how to speak without blame. They asked me questions about the case, about how it felt to testify, about fear. I answered honestly. Fear does not always scream, I told them. Sometimes it waits patiently for routine to make room for it. Over time, those dinners became something neither of us had planned. A family shaped not by blood, but by attention. At work, a new clerk started. Young, overwhelmed, working nights because she needed the money, not because she wanted the hours. I recognized the tightness in her shoulders, the way she hesitated before asking questions. One night, I brought her tea. She looked at me like I had handed her something rare. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have no idea how much this helps." But I did. I knew exactly what it meant to be seen in a place where most people only look past you. Months later, Aaron received a call while driving me home. His son had decided to move back to Los Angeles, slowly, carefully, but intentionally. They were rebuilding something that had broken long before I ever met either of them. That night, as Aaron dropped me off, he waited until I was inside before driving away. Some habits never disappear. I am 62 now. I still live in my small bungalow in East Los Angeles. I still work nights. I still drink tea when my hands shake. But I no longer believe I am alone in the quiet. I think often about how easily this story could have ended differently. If I had not spoken to my driver, if I had not offered a cup of tea, If Aaron had not learned to listen when others looked away. Kindness did not save me because it was magical or heroic. It saved me because it created connection. Connection creates awareness. Awareness creates action. And action changes outcomes. We live in a world where people are taught to mind their own business, to look down, to keep moving, where drivers are invisible and passengers are just fares, where silence is mistaken for safety. This story exists because one person chose to pay attention, because another chose to treat a stranger like a human being. So this is the lesson I carry forward. Be kind, not because you expect something in return. Be kind because attention is not weakness. Be kind because listening can save a life. You may never know whose routine you interrupt, whose fear you interrupt, whose ending you quietly rewrite by choosing to see them. I gave my night driver tea every week. One night, he missed my exit, and because of that, I am still here to tell this story. This was my true story from Los Angeles. Looking back, I know now that my life was not saved by luck or courage. It was saved by attention, by kindness, by two people who chose not to treat each other like background noise in a long, exhausting night. I did not give Aaron tea because I thought it would matter. I gave it because it felt human, because grief had taught me how heavy silence can be. And in return, he listened when others would have tuned out. He noticed patterns. He trusted his instincts. He chose to act. What I learned is this: evil rarely arrives loudly. It hides inside routine, inside schedules, inside the belief that nothing bad will happen tonight because nothing bad happened yesterday. Kindness does not make you weak. Awareness does not make you paranoid. Caring does not make you foolish. Sometimes, being kind is what keeps you alive. What lesson did you take from this story, and where are you watching from? Tell me your city in the comments.